The Toronto Garlic Festival is running until 5 this afternoon. 5 provinces are hiking up the minimum wage in an effort to support businesses and workers. At least that's what they say in their press releases. There's Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and PEI that are hiking minimum wage in those provinces starting October the 1st. The smallest increase is about 20 cents, the largest $1.30. Ontario is going up to $17.60. All jurisdictions, or at least provincial jurisdictions, and the federal government, besides Alberta, have raised their minimum wage this year, with Canadians continuing to struggle with high living costs. To help us understand, one, how the minimum wage changes and these small upticks can make a difference, and also what this really could do from an inflation standpoint, let's bring in Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. Ian, we very much appreciate you joining us today. And just to break down where things are at, $17.60, that's a small increase, but the federal government has said, the provincial government has said during the last several terms of the Premier Doug Ford's leadership that they are looking to increase the minimum wage, but not do it to a way that's hyperinflationary. Can you help us a little understand how increasing the minimum wage does help people, but potentially, and again, I'm not an economist, I want to say that to people at home, but how the arguments are being made that if you increase it too much during an era of inflation, that could make things worse for some people.
Right. Look, it's a mixed bag. This has been studied for probably 40, 50, 60 years, probably since the end of the Second World War. Economists have studied it. The Ontario government did under Kathleen Wynne. Economists have studied it. And when I say it's a mixed bag, let's put it out there. Yes, the people that are on minimum wage, which is only a small percentage of the country, by the way, it's less than 10%. It's about 8.8%, at least the studies I've looked at, of Canadians work at minimum wage. And they're overwhelmingly young people, 18 to 25, 16 to 25, who often live at home. But there's no question, if you put the minimum wage up, people have more money in their pocket, for sure. That's the plus side. That's the benefit. Everybody gets that benefit. The downside is that minimum wage is paid overwhelmingly by small businesses. Yes, there are some big businesses that pay minimum wage, especially in the restaurant, fast food. Okay, I'm not denying that at all. But the small business sector employs staggering amounts of people, numbers of people in the private sector. And they are the least capitalized. They have the highest failure rates. I'm saying that as a former banker who lent millions of dollars to small businesses some years ago. One only has to look at the stats and see that they employ lots and lots of Canadians, over 50%, but they also have high failure rates. And so a lot of small businesses are hanging on by their fingernails. And so this is obviously wages are a big cost. And so there's always the risk that we're going to tip some of those small businesses into bankruptcy.
So how does the delicate dance or balancing act really work if you're thinking from a policy standpoint?
Sure. I mean, I think ultimately it is a political decision. And I don't mean partisan political. I just mean it's a decision made by politics and politicians in legislative assemblies and parliaments. Nobody can point to, and I've had debates, I've actually debated some people on this. Nobody can point to a magical study and say, this proves definitively that the benefits are all good or they're all bad. There's studies on both sides. I would just point out something. Right now, restaurant sales are down very dramatically. This was reported in the Globe and Mail only 5 days ago. And now I'm not trying to suggest it's because of the minimum wage. You know, the prices have gone up. It's a very uncertain economy. People are very worried. A lot of uncertainty out there. Restaurants are a discretionary good. You don't have to go to a restaurant. So you can stay home, which is the biggest competitor of restaurants, is people who stay at home and eat at home. But the sales are, their sales are down very dramatically at restaurants across Canada, and they do employ a significant number of people. So very quickly, some states in the States and some provinces have created almost a two-wage structure where you have one lower wage for people in, for example, in restaurants, or for people below a certain age, but recognizing that they're working part-time and that they're students. And this is to help those small businesses and to recognize that those minimum wage jobs are bridges to the employment world. I've been saying this for 40 years. I worked at minimum wage when I left high school. And it's how young people get their first foot in the door are those minimum wage jobs. And so when we put the wage rate up too quickly, what do businesses do? Well, they dial back and they use less people. And for those who say it can't be done, in the last 3 months, I've been to 3 different restaurants in Ottawa, mid-level restaurants, not high-end. The owner of the restaurant was serving the tables in each. I hadn't seen that in many, many years. The restaurant owner was serving the tables, clearly as an economy measure.
Now, Ian, you did mention 2 things, particularly, I know Ontario doesn't have a server wage, but you mentioned others do. Just thinking a little bit, though, about what the wage is at right now, and also the discretionary spending that things like restaurants represent. There's 2 questions I have. The first one is looking at those discretionary sectors of the economy. Are those particular areas, for instance, like restaurants, are they still being used as a springboard employment situation where people begin at minimum wage and ultimately move on and leave? Or are people getting stuck?
No, there's great churn. In fact, for all my lifetime, my adult lifetime, a lot of students became servers. I was a server in a restaurant, and when I was 17 or 18, I think it was 18. Quite a few of my students are servers in restaurants. And so this idea that those people there are stuck there permanently forever and ever is not supported by the stats. There's tremendous churn in minimum wage jobs. I already said it's about 8.8% of the population. Very few large corporations pay minimum wage. If they are, it's in the franchise fast food. I mean, banks don't pay minimum wage. Manufacturing companies don't pay minimum wage. IT companies don't pay minimum wage. And so it's so important, those minimum wage jobs, I believe, because when you're coming out of high school, you haven't yet fully matured. And you haven't acquired those habits of things like, showing up to work on time. And so that minimum wage job, I've argued for 40 odd years, is a very important job as an entree, as a bridge from being a high school student who doesn't have a job to a bridge to a job where you learn all kinds of just personal behavior traits. And then when they graduate from university or college, then they go on into the corporate world or the world of government, and then they leave the world of minimum wage behind. But if anyone thinks that minimum wage cohort of about 8.5%, 9%, 10% of the population are there forever and ever, that's not the case. They churn out. In other words, they graduate from school and they go get a real job.
Well, I do appreciate having a real conversation about this, Ian. We're going to have to leave it there, though. Unfortunately, we got to pay some bills ourselves. So as we say goodbye to Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business, we say thank you to you, sir.